Before I had a chance to wake up on the afternoon of July the 11th, 2014, I knew that something was wrong. There was a scent wafting through the air, coming into my nostrils of sickness and death, and it was all too familiar. So I shook myself to get myself awake. I looked down at my right arm, and I saw an IV, and on my left arm another, and my heart sunk. Because I knew exactly what had happened, again. See, I'm somebody who had struggled with drug and alcohol addiction for years. And it seemed that no matter what I tried to do, I just could not get myself past this problem. I started to feel hopeless. I felt that no matter what, I was just going to be trapped in this life, this vicious cycle of getting better for a little bit, then getting worse, and so on and back and forth. Then a doctor came in and asked me how I was doing, and I told him I was fine, but I wasn't fine. The truth is, I could see my life of the last 22 years, could see what I was like prior to using drugs and alcohol, and just how far down I had fallen. I had gone from having a lot of academic potential to having none, from having good relationships with my friends and family to having none, and from feeling positive and good about myself to that moment where I felt like there really was no hope. But for some reason, that day, I decided that maybe I could just try this one more time. Maybe I could go down to a rehab institution, and maybe they would tell me something that I could learn. So as the days wore on before I left, that there was a tiny glimmer of hope that started to emerge, and I could see it. I started to feel as if I really would never use drugs and alcohol again, that there was this concrete resolve that was hardening in the back of my head. So I hopped on a plane and I flew down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now, I wish I could just end the story there and tell you guys that I went down there, I got my life back on track, and I've been better since. But unfortunately, that would be missing the main point of the story. You see, after I got off that plane, immediately I felt as if a part of me was missing. It was strange. I felt empty. There I was, having put down drugs and alcohol, and all of a sudden I felt empty. And the reason why was because for so many years, that was my relentless pursuit in life. That was what I woke up in the morning thinking about every day. Where was I going to get money to buy drugs? And it's what I planned to do in the evenings. So with that eliminated in my life, I felt like this drive that I had was just gone, and I felt empty, lost, and hopeless. And as I went through the rehab program, things started to deteriorate and to become worse. I started becoming irritated and angry. I would lash out at people. And there was this perfidious and pernicious voice in the back of my head that was talking to me, and it was telling me, you don't need this place is not for you, you should leave, and even worse, that maybe things before weren't so bad. Now that might sound crazy, but the truth is it's a known psychological phenomenon, right? My life was atrocious before. Why was his voice telling me things were okay? It's a phenomenon that when we tend to remember things in the past, we oftentimes we remember the positive things, but forget a lot of the negatives. In one word, it just sums up as nostalgia. And it was really eating at me. The more time wore on, the more powerful this voice became, and the more I actually started to believe it. And then one day, when I was particularly angry and upset, I was sitting outside, and I had perhaps the most important conversation of my life with a counselor there. He came up to me and he said, you know, Tom, I've seen hundreds of people go through this program, and I've seen hundreds of people leave. And the truth is, most of them just don't make it. And I recoiled for a little bit because I knew that I'd never wanted to go back to drugs and alcohol again, but this guy sort of had a point. He was telling me that most people, when they go through these programs, they just don't change anything about themselves. If you don't change anything about yourself, you go back to doing the same behavior you did before. So I was a little nervous, but I asked him what he thought I should do, and this is what he told me. He pointed over to a young man who was sitting a couple dozen feet away. They told me to look at him, so I did. The boy was sitting over there. It was his first day. He was still physically sick from withdrawal, and his head was in his hands. And he told me to go over there and try and cheer him up. And I sort of jumped back. I said, what can I do that a counselor or a healthcare professional can't? The counselor laughed at me and just told me to go over and just to talk to him. So I walked over and I just sat down and said, "Hey, dude, how you doing?" And I wish I could tell you that there was something profound that came out of that conversation, but there wasn't. We just talked about sports for 5 minutes. But as I got back up to walk over to the counselor to tell him what had happened, on my way over, I looked back at the young man, and this was a guy that was practically in tears before, and I saw him crack a little bit of a smile. And that warmed me up inside so much. It's difficult to explain why or how, but it warmed me up inside so much. And it seemed all of a sudden that that feeling of emptiness that I had had before was somehow filled with the feeling of making a positive change in someone else's life. Just doing a small little gesture like that. Because the moment, I realize it now, but the moment that I was able to take my problems and cast them to the side and focus on somebody else for just a few minutes, my problems seemed to disappear. So a few days later, I left the rehab facility armed with a tool in my back pocket that I knew that I could use whenever I needed it. It was a tool that gave me some meaning and some purpose in life. Now, I'm not saying I got up and I moved over to Bangladesh to live amongst the homeless there, or I joined the Peace Corps, but it's just been on a day-to-day basis doing the little things that can help me both forget about my problems and make small incremental changes in the world. So, for example, something as simple as seeing a woman who appears to be a single mom as a waitress, giving her an extra tip, not cutting someone off to jump on the subway, because I can wait 5 minutes, and they're obviously in a rush. But just doing little things like that on a day-to-day basis, it's been amazing the changes that I've been able to make in my life and how I've seen my life go from feeling empty and as if I had nothing really to live for, to moving slowly in that positive direction. But in the end, I don't really want this story to be so much about me, because there are so many people out in the world that either struggle with drug or alcohol issues or know somebody who does. And this is quite a large problem. A lot of these people feel, and myself included, like there really was no hope, that they had tried everything, rehab, therapy, wilderness, AA, you name it, had tried all that and it just hadn't worked. But I want people to know that there is hope, that it is possible, that the tip that I found, which is doing positive things for people on a day-to-day basis, really has worked for me. I don't really have a good explanation for it, but I like to think of the world's, my actions on a scale. On one hand, there's everything I've taken from the world. Take money, take other people's emotions. And on the other hand, there's everything I give him back. For so long, it was disgustingly imbalanced towards the take, and giving almost nothing, that over time, as I've been able to try and tip and make these scales even, I've actually been at peace with myself. And once I'm at peace with myself, I can really do quite a lot. Because there's a lot of potential that's bubbling up and ready to burst out of a lot of addicts and alcoholics. I was just introduced to somebody who wants to become a professional skydiver. I'm also training for a marathon currently, love doing extreme sports. I went from being practically a failing student to graduating summa cum laude from Rutgers, went from having very little money to now working a very good job in New York City, and most importantly, going from having no good relationships, friends and family really didn't want to talk to me, just thought I was a lost cause, to now having those positive relationships in my life. So really the thing that I hope that at least somebody in this audience can get out of this is that for the person who struggles with drug and alcohol problems, that no matter where they have been in the past, and I remember the night before I went into the hospital, I was sitting in the back of my house, I was shaking, I was shivering, I was sweating bullets as I was desperately trying to smoke as many drugs as I could. If I could go from that, everything wrong in my life and that, to where I am today, I just hope it gives some sort of hope and inspiration to other people who are going through the same issues. Thank you.